Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling a subject that, on the surface, feels a bit like reading the terms and conditions of a credit card.
Yeah.
We are talking about AWS technical and support resources, but, and stick with me here, this is not just about memorizing phone numbers for when things, break.
It really isn't. It's funny you mentioned terms and conditions because the source material we are looking at today, the AWS Practitioner 402 notes, they paint a picture of support that is actually strategic. It's all about operational survival.
Right. I think most of us have this default setting where support is the help desk. It's the place you go when you're angry or, panicked. But looking at these notes, AWS support seems designed to be an ecosystem. It's less of a safety net and more like, a co-pilot.
That is the perfect way to frame the mission of this deep dive. We need to decode that ecosystem. And the source material, it breaks it down into 3 specific layers. You have the support plans, which are basically your license to operate. You have the human experts, and we need to clarify those roles because they get confusing. And finally, the automated guardians, the tools that run in the background.
And the hook for me, the thing that really stood out in the first few pages of the notes, is that choosing a support tier isn't just a budgeting decision. It's actually a declaration of your project's maturity. The notes make a really sharp distinction between experimenting and production.
And that distinction is the foundation of everything we're going to talk about. It's a ladder. You start at the bottom as a learner, and you climb up to running mission-critical infrastructure. And knowing exactly which rung of that ladder you are standing on dictates what tools you can even touch.
So let's start climbing. We begin at the very bottom. The notes call this the basic plan.
This is the default. If you sign up for an AWS account today to learn how to launch a virtual server, this is where you land. The notes specify that billing here is usually tied to personal details. It is the individual tier.
So as a basic user, what happens if I accidentally delete my database or, lock myself out of my server? Can I call someone?
You can call customer service, but only for account and billing issues. If you have a technical problem, like why isn't my code working or why can't I connect to this instance, you are on your own. You get the AWS Health Dashboard to see if AWS itself is having a problem, and you have all the documentation. But no humans are coming to save you on the technical side.
Okay, so that's fine for the weekend hobbyist. The next rung up is the developer plan. The name seems pretty self-explanatory, but the notes have a specific warning about this tier.
They do. It explicitly states that the developer plan is for experimenting or testing. This is crucial. This is not for running a business. The key limitation here is access. You get technical support, yes, but only during business hours.
And we all know that servers have a nasty habit of crashing at 3 p.m. on a Sunday.
Exactly. And the response times reflect that testing mindset. The notes mention that for a system-impaired issue, the response time is less than 12 business hours. If you are running a live app and it goes down, waiting 12 hours is an eternity. You could lose your entire user base.
Which brings us to the tipping point. The notes identify the business plan as the minimum tier for in-production workloads.
This is the most important definition in the entire document. If you have paying customers, or if your application matters to your reputation, you have to be here. Minimum.
There was a really interesting nuance in the source material about the definition of the business plan. It pointed out that the word business doesn't actually appear in the definition text itself, but the billing is tied to business details.
It's a subtle but legalistic distinction. When you move to this tier, you are effectively shifting from a personal liability to a corporate one. You are telling AWS, this is a company asset. And because it's a company asset, the service level changes completely. The headline feature here is 247 access to cloud support engineers.
That is the game changer. 3:0 a.m. on a Sunday. Someone picks up.
Exactly. And the response time for a production system down event drops to under 1 hour. But there are 2 other features unlocked at the business level that I think are even more valuable than the phone support. First, you get the AWS support app in Slack.
I saw that in the notes. It seems like such a small operational detail, but having support chat integrated right into your team's Slack is huge.
It is huge because it reduces friction. You don't have to log into a separate portal, find the ticket number, and copy-paste updates. You can chat with AWS support right where your developers are already talking. It keeps the context visible to the whole team.
And the second unlock is the full checks on AWS Trusted Advisor.
Yes. We are going to dive deep into Trusted Advisor in a few minutes, but just know this. On the lower plans, Trusted Advisor is basically wearing a blindfold. It only checks a few things. Once you hit the business plan, the blindfold comes off and it scans your entire environment.
Okay, so business is the standard for production. But then we have the heavy hitters, the enterprise on-ramp and enterprise support.
Right, these are for business-critical and mission-critical workloads. We're talking about banks, hospitals, major airlines. The complexity here is so high that a generic support queue just isn't enough. You need a guide.
And that guide is the TAM, the Technical Account Manager.
This is the aha feature of the enterprise tiers. A TAM isn't just a support agent. They are a named resource. They know your architecture. They know your team. They sit in on your planning meetings.
So they aren't just reacting when things break.
No. They are proactive. They provide consultative architectural reviews. They advocate for you inside AWS. If you have a massive issue, the TAM is the person who knows exactly which internal team at AWS needs to be paged to fix it.
That sounds incredibly reassuring. Now, the notes also mentioned a service called AWS Countdown, which is available from the business tier upwards. Is that related to the TAM?
It's similar in spirit, but focused on specific events. Think of Countdown as a specialized service for the nervous moments. Let's say you aren't a massive enterprise, but you are about to launch a new product, or maybe you're running a Super Bowl ad. You know traffic is going to spike.
And you are terrified the servers are just going to melt.
Right. AWS Countdown allows you to bring in experts to assess your operational readiness before the event. They help you manage the countdown, hence the name, so that when the traffic hits, your architecture holds up.
It's like hiring a structural engineer to inspect the bridge right before you drive the heavy truck over it.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
So we've climbed the ladder of plans. But let's talk about the people. The source material spends a fair amount of time distinguishing between different types of human experts, and honestly, this is where I usually get confused. We have AWS Professional Services and AWS Solutions Architects. To the layman, they sound like the same job.
It is a very common point of confusion. I've seen companies hire the wrong one and get frustrated, but the notes draw a very sharp line between them based on outcome versus output.
Okay, let's unpack that. Professional services first.
The notes describe professional services, or ProServe, as a global team focused on helping organizations achieve business outcomes. They are consultants. They are there for the transformation journey.
So if a company says, we need to close all our data centers and become a cloud-native company to save 20% on overhead, ProServe is who you call.
Exactly. They align the technology with the strategic goals. They look at culture, processes, and the long-term roadmap. They are there to help you navigate the change.
Contrast that with the solutions architect.
The solutions architect, or SA, is the builder. The source notes say their role is to transform client requirements into technical solutions. If ProServe says we need to be agile, the SA says, okay, here is the CloudFormation template to deploy a serverless microservices architecture.
So the SA is closer to the code.
Right.
They are troubleshooting, offering best practices on security, and helping with the actual implementation.
Yes, they are focused on the how. How do we make this secure? How do we make this cost-effective? How do we make it scale?
Now, what if you need help, but you don't necessarily want AWS employees? Maybe you need a specific niche expert. The source mentions the APN.
The AWS Partner Network. And the scale here is just staggering. The notes cite over 140,000 partners in 200 countries.
140,000. That is a small city of consultants.
It is, and these include systems integrators, software vendors, managed service providers, training organizations. It's a massive economy of experts who build on AWS.
But with 140,000 options, how do you filter the noise? How do I know if a partner actually knows what they are doing and isn't just someone who read a book on cloud computing last week?
That is where the validation programs come in. The notes highlight that AWS uses specific designations like competency, service delivery, and managed service provider to validate a partner's expertise.
Is that just a marketing badge?
No, it's rigorously vetted. For example, to get a migration competency, a partner has to prove to AWS that they have successfully migrated multiple large customers. They are technically audited, so when you hire them, you know they have done this specific procedure before.
That makes sense. It creates a trust layer. Okay, moving on. We've talked about the plans. We've talked about the humans. Now let's talk about the robots, the automated guardians.
This is the part of the ecosystem that I find most fascinating because it represents the future of operations. AWS is trying to offload the vigilance from humans to machines.
And the star of the show here is AWS Trusted Advisor. We touched on it earlier, but let's really get into it. The notes list 6 pillars that Trusted Advisor monitors.
Right. And remember, you only get full access to these pillars on the business plan and up. They are cost optimization, performance, security, fault tolerance, service limits, sometimes called quotas, and operational excellence.
Cost optimization is the one everyone loves. It's basically a tool that says, hey, you left the lights on in that room, go turn them off.
Exactly. It finds idle load balancers or unattached IP addresses that are costing you money but doing nothing. But I think the service limits pillar is the unsung hero
Why is that?
because service limits are silent killers of growth. Every account has default limits, like you can only launch 20 instances in a region. If you launch a marketing campaign and your autoscaler tries to launch the 21st instance and you haven't requested an increase...
You hit a brick wall, the site crashes.
Precisely. Trusted Advisor monitors your usage against those quotas and warns you, hey, you are at 80% of your limit, request an increase now. It prevents the disaster before it happens.
Now, here is a really cool technical detail from the notes for the developers listening.
Right.
There is a Trusted Advisor API.
Yes, the Trusted Advisor API. This allows IAM users, that's Identity and Access Management users, to access those checks programmatically.
And the notes say this allows you to create support cases programmatically.
That's the implication, and it's huge. It means you don't have to log into a dashboard to see these alerts. You can write a script that queries the API. If Trusted Advisor finds a security vulnerability, your script could, in theory, detect it and automatically open a support ticket.
That connects the diagnosis directly to the cure. It's operational automation.
It fits perfectly into that operational excellence pillar. It eliminates the human latency.
Now, alongside Trusted Advisor, we have the Health Dashboard. How is that different?
Think of it this way. Trusted Advisor looks at your choices and configurations. The Health Dashboard looks at AWS's reality. It tracks important events affecting your resources, scheduled changes, and event logs.
So if a backhoe hits a fiber line outside a data center in Virginia, this is where I see it.
Correct. And it integrates with Amazon Event Bridge, so you can set up notifications, email, Slack, SMS, whenever an event impacts your resources.
But there's a gatekeeper here too, right? The notes mention something specific about the Health API.
Yes, and this goes back to our ladder of support plans. You can view the dashboard visually on any plan. But if you want to access that data programmatically via the Health API to pull that outage data into your own monitoring tools like Datadog or Splunk, you need a business support plan or higher.
Ah, the velvet rope again. And there was a very specific security nuance mentioned for the Health API that caught my eye. It mentioned STS.
Right. This is a bit technical, but vital for security. The notes emphasize that to access the Health API, you cannot use your standard long-term access keys. You must use STS, the Security Token Service, to generate temporary keys.
Why the extra hoop?
It's a best practice called limiting the blast radius. If you have a permanent key and it gets stolen, the hacker has access forever until you notice. If you use a temporary key generated by STS, it expires automatically after a set time, usually an hour. Even if it gets stolen, it becomes useless very quickly.
That is a great explanation.
Yeah.
It forces you to be secure by design.
Exactly.
Speaking of learning about all this stuff, let's talk about the knowledge base. The source material lists a whole library of self-service resources. We have white papers, blogs, documentation. Is there a hierarchy here?
Definitely. It depends on your goal. If you are prepping for a certification exam or you need to defend a major architectural decision to your CTO, you go to the white papers. The notes describe them as authoritative technical documents. They are dense, peer-reviewed, and cover topics in extreme depth.
And the blogs.
The AWS blogs are for timeliness. New announcements, architecture best practices, industry-specific solutions. If you want to know what feature launched yesterday, you read the blog.
And then there is AWS Repost. Now, I know internet forums can be a mixed bag. Is this just another Reddit?
No, and the source material is specific about this distinction. AWS Repost is a community forum, yes, but it is moderated by AWS experts. That is the key. You aren't just getting advice from random anonymous users. There is a layer of verification involved. It ensures the advice you get isn't going to break your system.
That's a huge relief. And finally, the marketplace.
The App Store for the enterprise. The notes describe it as the place to find, buy, deploy, and manage third-party software.
But why buy through the marketplace? Why not just go to the vendor's website?
2 reasons: deployment and billing. If you buy a firewall or database tool through the marketplace, you can often deploy it directly into your AWS environment with a few clicks. But the real business win is the consolidated billing. You get one invoice from AWS that includes your infrastructure costs and your third-party software licenses.
Procurement departments must love that. No more chasing down 50 different invoices.
They absolutely do. It simplifies the paper trail immensely.
Okay, we have to touch on the serious stuff before we wrap up. Trust, safety, and security.
This is the neighborhood watch of the cloud.
The notes mention a trust and safety team. What do they actually do?
They investigate abuse. We are talking about malware, spam, phishing sites, or hosting prohibited content.
And what decides what is prohibited?
The AUP, the Amazon Acceptable Use Policy. The Trust and Safety Team receives reports of abuse, they investigate them, and if necessary, they take action or collaborate with law enforcement.
So if you see a phishing site hosted on an AWS IP address, these are the people you tell.
Correct, and they take it very seriously.
The notes end this section with a very specific security tip regarding support interactions. It says AWS recommends using IAM roles, not the root user, when contacting support.
This is Security 101, but it bears repeating. Your root user is the God mode of your account. It has unlimited power. You should almost never use it for daily tasks. Even when opening a support case, you should be using an IAM role with the appropriate permissions.
Why does that matter for a support ticket?
Because it limits risk. If your root credentials were somehow compromised during an interaction, the attacker has everything. If a delegated IAM role is compromised, they only have the permissions you gave that role. It limits the blast radius.
Limit the blast radius. I feel like that should be the motto of this entire deep dive.
It's a good rule for life in the cloud.
Okay, let's unpack this whole deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. What are the key takeaways for you?
For me, it boils down to alignment. First, align your plan with your risk. If you are in production, you must be on the business plan. The liability of being offline without 24/7 support is simply too high.
Right. And the second?
Know your humans. Understand the difference between the strategist, the professional services team, and the builder, the solutions architect. And don't forget the massive power of the partner network to fill the gaps in your own team's expertise.
And then the third?
Automate the vigilance. Use Trusted Advisor not just as a dashboard you check once a month, but as an active tool. Use the API. Use the health dashboard notifications. Don't wait for things to break. Let the tools tell you they are about to break.
It really changes the definition of support. It's not reactive, it's proactive. It's an operational layer that runs parallel to your actual work.
That is the perfect way to put it. Support isn't a safety net you fall into. It's the scaffolding that holds the building up while you construct it.
I love that. Now, before we go, I want to leave you with a thought, a bit of a provocation based on what we learned today about those APIs.
Let's hear it.
We talked about the Trusted Advisor API. We talked about how it can let systems create support cases programmatically. So imagine a near future where your system detects a fault via Trusted Advisor. It uses the API to open a support case. On the other side, an AWS automated system receives that case, diagnoses it, and perhaps triggers a remediation script to fix it.
I see where you are going with this.
If our systems can self-diagnose via Trusted Advisor and self-report via the API, are we moving toward a future where the support ticket is handled entirely machine to machine? Do we reach a point where the human element, the phone call, the chat, even the TAM, is bypassed entirely because the machines have already fixed the problem before we even woke up?
That is a fascinating and slightly terrifying possibility. The ultimate operational excellence might be the one where we aren't needed at all. We just sleep soundly while the bots fix the world.
Something to think about next time you're stuck on hold with your cable company. That's it for this deep dive into AWS support. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.